Arc Raiders is finally here. Well, as of publishing this video, a bit early, launching officially tomorrow on the 30th, but whether or not you're here finding this video as early as of when it's published or after the fact of Arc Raiders' launch, today we're diving into an ultimate beginner's guide. Whether you've picked up the game from Tech Test 2 back in April or perhaps even earlier in closed tests, or if this is the first time you're picking it up with the launch, welcome to Speranza. Veteran or first-time players, we're running down absolutely everything you'll need to know so that you can get the hang of this game and make each of your runs more successful than the last. I think that I should have covered just about everything you could think of, but if I do miss something you think is worth noting, drop it down below. We're all here for the same reason, to enjoy Arc Raiders and build the game experience to be better together. A big thanks to Embark Studios for sponsoring this video. Check out Arc Raiders in the description below if you'd like to pick it up for yourself, but also be on the lookout for further tips, guides for XP, crafting, upgrades, blueprint locations, Easter eggs, you name it. I'm incredibly stoked for all that we have in store here for this game. So if you enjoy this video, drop a like on it. Make sure you subscribe for more of what we just mentioned. And for now, this is an incredibly long one, so sit back, relax, and let's venture topside together. First things first, initial startup for the game. You're going to need to go through the training and onboarding sequence for Arc Raiders for the first time you boot up the game. This being a tutorial that Embark has had in Arc Raiders for each of the last times we've seen the game in a public or closed capacity. Funnily enough, when this game launches fully tomorrow on the 30th, I'll actually have had to do this tutorial 5 times between all the capture sessions and public releases we've had the last few months. This just gives you a basic rundown of everything that you can expect. Looting, combat, healing, evasion of arc machines, all the basic in-game situations. One tip I can give, you're going to get ambushed in this tutorial, then when you wake up, raiders will have taken all your loot before that point, so if you wait to loot the indoors or stash the loot you have up until that point before opening the door and breaching that, after the ambush, you can circle back around and grab all of that, and then you get a little bit of extra stuff that will stay with you for your initial inventory once you're in Speranza. Also, be on the lookout for additional hidden bags. There's a few of them throughout the level that can give you just a tad more loot to start out with. That said, once you end up descending into Speranza, you end up seeing your main menu, which has a lot of things you can interact with. Let's start out with what you see first thing there. Let's talk about the upper right first. You're going to see notations for Raider coins, Cred, Raider tokens, your inbox, and your rank. Raider coins, these are your in-game independent currency. These are used for your in-game economy of buying and selling. If you want to buy something like from a trader, you're likely going to spend Raider coins there. You can end up actually trading other specific items to specific traders, but a lot of the times you're going to end up seeing it being Raider coins. If you're expanding your stash, you're going to be using these. You're selling items, you're going to be getting these. This is truly the organic in-game economy currency. Cred is a challenge-based currency where this is entirely earned by completing feats, which are challenges that can be completed in-game and that are on a refresh cycle, so you'll always have more to do, just maybe you complete some faster than others. When Cred is awarded, it's the way you unlock items in the Raider decks, essentially your battle passes. There's both free and paid battle passes coming in the future, so there's plenty that you can do organically and work on. But unlocking items, whether that pass entry is free or costs tokens, every item inside that is unlocked via Cred. So your progression is all based on play and challenge completion. Raider tokens, these are then your cosmetic tokens, your things that you use to buy more outfits and uniforms, and again, sometimes entry into those Raider decks. How often that'll be the case in the future, we don't quite know, but at the moment, it's more of your cosmetic-based currency. Inbox is where you can end up seeing redemptions and game messages and things like that, and then your rank is your overall rank. Ranking up provides a few more benefits with each level. The most notable, initially at least, is the skill tree rewards. Each level you rank up, you gain another skill token to use and work towards unlocking specific attributes about your character. But more on that in a bit. But how do you rank up? What is XP granted for? Well, you'll see things attributing to rank including but not limited to damaging other raiders, that being your shots landed, knocking out raiders, which is finishing them off, knocking out raiders assist. If you end up, say, getting shots on and your teammate ends up downing them and finishing them, you end up getting XP for that. Damaging arc machines, destroying arc machines, including assists on damaged arc machines, scavenging, and spending time on the surface, which is just simply surviving. That'll grant you XP, and oftentimes it's actually one of the largest single XP yields of any of the mentioned categories, so simply staying alive really is good for ranking up. But honestly, looting everything is as well really solid for ranking up. May feel like you're not finding anything good, but just the act of looting is incredibly good for XP. But let's talk a little bit about what else you'll end up seeing here throughout your menu and navigation for Arc Raiders. let's talk about traders real quick. Traders are these main points of interest you'll go to within the game for the gameplay loop outside of actually a raid. Traders end up having quick buy options for specific items you may need, whether it's items for a crafting recipe, a weapon or ammunition, healing and shields. Just about everything, functionally speaking, can be found through these traders. Not everything, but pretty close, especially early game. Traders will also have quests that you can end up embarking on, which will end up granting you specific rewards for the task at hand, but more on that in a second. Shawnee is your security trader, where these trades will include things like binoculars and your raider hatch keys. Celeste ends up having trades of a whole lot of everything you could think of, really, like chemicals, complex gun parts, ropes, batteries, Exodus models, oil, and so on and so forth. TON is the gun shop, where you'll end up having weapons, ammunition, and weapon modifications like attachments. Lance will end up having a lot of your sort of augments and shields, some healing as well. And then Apollo will end up having some of your gear like explosives, barricades, and things like that. There are introduced with the server slams some items that do have purchase limits here. This offsetting with some of the balance on items like raider hatch keys that were previously just abundant and altered the flow of the game in match when there was a ton of them on the market and in the world. Other things that end up having some purchase limits are like your heavy shields from Lance. These being on a timed rotation, just simply because buying too many of them could end up becoming something that offsets the balance of the ecosystem and how your health ends up working. Now, each of these traders will end up having quests that you'll have to complete sequentially, and again, will offer you benefits in the shape of different rewards. Doing these early and often really helps to boost your ranking up, but also boosting up your inventory, something that whenever you're a starting player, you won't have a whole ton of great stuff. So being able to end up getting anything that will help put you in the right direction, give you a better fighting chance topside, is definitely worth going for. Let's talk about the workshop now. Here you can end up installing multiple different stations throughout your entire raider progression. Stations include your workbench, explosive station, gear bench, gunsmith, medical lab, refiner, and utility station. The workbench is just a general station. You have a little bit of your general items there. Explosive station, this is where you craft grenades and mines and things like that. Your gear bench is used to craft shields and augments. Gunsmith is used to craft weapons and upgrade them, as well as ammo and any weapon modifications like attachments. Your medical lab is used to craft stimulants and healing items. Your refiner is used to craft custom parts, but on a sort of timer scale, rare items, but in limited timed quantities. And then your utility station is used to craft lures, grenades, barricades, and more. Now, each of these stations can be upgraded. After they're installed, you'll have a base level of options to craft and see. Some items, though, you may see and they may be grayed out or inaccessible, and it will tell you need to level 2, level 3, or something like that. Upgrading these can be done by collecting the necessary items for the upgrades in the Level Up tab of the station next to the Crafting tab. These will task you with finding specific items in-world or buying and trading for them in order to then level up your station. Leveling up is imperative if you want to end up getting better and better stuff and be able to actually craft them. Otherwise, you'll just be stuck at the mercy of whatever the traders have or whatever you find in-world. This gives you a lot more control over higher level and end game loot, saving you a lot in resources and coins compared to buying and trading them. Now, one thing that you'll end up seeing is that there are a handful that, are initially locked off and things you can't quite get to. But the more that you end up playing, the more you end up finding things in world, you'll probably come across a lot of blueprints. The blueprint system is an extension of these stations. Upon first installing a station or even upgrading it, again, there's a finite number of items you'll see in that available inventory, even if locked off due to station levels. But more can be found via blueprints. These are schematics that can be found in-world around various locations in each of the maps available that once extracted with can be consumed and learned, and you'll end up having that sort of knowledge available to use at whatever the corresponding station is for it. Once your station is upgraded enough, you can then craft that item whenever you want and have the required items. No sort of limit or anything on how many times you can craft it at that point. It's just whenever you get the availability for it, you can craft it. Now, as for your inventory, let's talk about this. Firstly, a general sort of overall perspective. You're going to see a bunch of different rarities within the game. You'll end up having green, which is your uncommon stuff that you just kind of find all the time. Blue is a bit more rarer items. Pink is your epic, and then yellow is your legendary, the rarest of the rare. In your inventory, you end up having a couple of different breakdowns of different slots you can play around with. You have your equipment, you have weapons, then you end up having quick use, augment slots, and safe pockets. Starting at the top here, your equipment, your augments, and your shields. Your augments are your backpacks. These are varied in level depending on rarity and in crafting capacities, the amount it will take to get those different items. But with the full launch, you'll have variations. Like a looting augment will allow for more looting capacity at the detriment of a trade-off of something else. Some augments have special benefits that they can do things like healing you once you're revived or something like that. Then shields, these are your shields, your extra added sort of first line of defense before you end up just losing health when being shot at by either an arc or an enemy player. You'll end up having light, medium, and heavy shields obviously being the best of those, but also being the rarest in terms of maybe organically crafting, or in the sense of buying them from Lance, the most limited and the most expensive. One thing to note though is that sometimes the shields, whenever they look to match up, medium to Mark II or something like that, it depends on the augment type. Sometimes you can't actually take that second level of shield with a, say, looting backpack. As for your weapons, you end up having a various number of different weapons out there. Honestly, as of the time of recording this, I'm not entirely sure how many there actually are. I think there were like 20 when we last had access, in which that's the Anvil, Arpeggio, Bettina, Bobcat, Burletta, Equalizer, Pharaoh, Hairpin, Hallcracker, Il Toro, Jupiter, Kettle, Osprey, Rattler, Renegade, Stitcher, Tempest, Torrent, Venator, and the Volcano. So pending no extra additions or anything, you should at least have those 20 available. Some, of course, much rarer than others. Like I think I remember seeing the Jupiter as one of the Harvester rewards, where you had to sneak past or defeat the Queen and then complete the Harvester sort of like inner puzzle to shut it down and then get the loot. So a lot of rare stuff as well. But ammo types, you have your light. This ammo is good for close quarters, shredding enemies in their armor. Medium is good for more medium ranges and a bit more packing a punch here, whether it be on other raiders or if you want to fight arc with it. Heavy ammo is usually found in those sort of longer rifles and also the Anvil, that heavy magnum pistol. But these are good for long range, that kind of stuff, but also taking down arc with relative ease. Shotgun ammo is pretty solid. Also, if depending on the rarity of weapon you have, it can be insane against other raiders. And then energy ammo, you'll have to find this specifically for more legendary tier weapons or craft it, and this is something that gets a little expensive but also can do quite a bit of damage. Before moving on quickly, let's talk about some weapon composition. You can end up equipping attachments to different weapons that can make a difference, whether it be magazine modifications to give you more ammunition, whether it be silencers to perhaps, I think, being one of the biggest benefits here with this. If you're playing like PvE-esque, obviously the threat of other players is always present, but if you are stealthing around, you want to stay out of the radar, this is a great way to do that. Attachments can be found, crafted, looted, or bought from different vendors, but you'll have a bunch of different options here with this in the full game to craft however you like. One thing to note though is that some of them do end up having sort of limitations and don't apply to specific weapons, so double check the attachments before you end up either crafting them or spending any coins on them to end up getting attachments. Let's talk about next some of your quick use, augment, and safe pocket slots. Quick use is something that will just allow you to cycle with a tap or bring up the full quick use menu, that selection wheel with whatever you have it bound at. I think it's Q by default on keys and then left trigger on controller. This will then bring up anything you have in that quick use selection location. Augment slots are specific bonus slots pending what type of augment you may have that allows for a bit more extended use of that. And then the safe pocket, this varies in quantity depending on the augment or backpack you have, but it allows you to store inventory items, not weapons, and keep them safe even if you die. So if you get back to Speranza after being knocked and losing all your stuff, you'll lose everything except those safe pocket items. So if there's something you really need for a quest, something you really want to hold on to, make sure you have it in that safe pocket just to be safe. Now, as for in-match notices with your inventory, you'll see things like weight and value. Weight is how much your inventory weighs on you and how much you can actually carry. This is dependent and changes depending on the augment or backpack that you end up having on your person. Now, it's kind of a recommendation because yes, technically you can take more than what that number says, but if you do, you're then over encumbered, meaning that you'll end up being heavier than what you want to be and you'll be slowed down physically speaking. So it's going to tremendously slow you down traversing the maps that you're on, and sometimes could get you stuck out in the open and you're just in danger at that point. Value is how much you get if you sold everything in your inventory. Can be a good indicator if you need to upgrade or buy specific things when returning to Speranza, but you can keep an eye on that for like a quick recommendation. Now, as for your inventory, you start with a relatively limited amount of space. Like when you first start, it might seem like a decent bit, but I promise you that is going to fill up very quickly with how many things you need to end up getting for crafting, for quest lines, how much stuff Scrappy the Rooster ends up getting you after every single raid. It's going to fill up quick. So to expand this, you end up having to go up to the upper left of your inventory with the expand option, and this will end up costing you Raider coins. So again, you can end up either buying and selling things elsewhere with traders, you can sell items in your inventory to end up getting more coins, but that's how you expand that a little further. Blueprints, once again, if you have one of these in your inventory, you have to consume and learn that, but once consumed and learned, it is something that allows you to craft that depending on whatever station it's associated with and whatever level it's associated with. So you'll end up being able to forever be able to craft that. It's a one-time find and use thing, except whenever you do the expeditions, which is basically your voluntary wipes. That's something we'll get to a little later. One thing to also note with Arc Raiders and your inventory is there is item decay, or rather like wear on it. So every so often you are going to need to repair items from time to time that will cost X amount of whatever it will tell you when you bring it up. So just know that your things can end up decaying to the point where they're going to break. You just need to make sure that you fix those in time to make them worthwhile and be able to still use them. Additionally, rounding out your inventory and UI, you have quick inventory actions where you can unload your backpack after a raid that will drop everything into your inventory. You can select multiple items at a time, you can quick move items, and you can split stacks depending on what your input selection is to make things a little easier. But next, let's talk about the Raider, because there's a lot of things here that now come along with this. In the tech test, in the server slam, we saw access to the skill tree and customization, but not trials, projects, or the Codex. Now, as for the skill tree, first and foremost, this is something that gives a sort of RPG element to the game's experience, offering much more depth and complexity than the standard formula of getting in, looting up, and extracting. Skill points are earned each time you rank up, so make sure you're scavenging, staying alive while topside, and completing quests in order to gain as much XP and progression as possible. There are three main sort of wings or branches of this skill tree that we've seen to date: conditioning, mobility, and survival, each offering their own unique attributes that can be upgraded that can see major benefit to your player. Personally speaking, I've kind of always gravitated towards the mobility category as my first stop, with the first 10 or so at least of my skill points, because that will allow me to increase my stamina, meaning I can run longer and further without taking any breaks in between, which for me, traversal like that is hugely important compared to other elements that I may end up taking into consideration. But there is no shortage of how much you can end up ranking up and getting this skill tree that you can basically make like a super raider if you really want to. But anyways, customization is something that also comes along with this, where there's plenty that you can see and take into account, and this is just the beginning here with the launch of the game. You have things that you can customize, like your appearance, style, emotes, and even Scrappy. Your appearance is going to come down to your singular attributes of your character at their core: hair color, body type, scars, other stuff like that. Style is where you'll end up seeing your outfit customization, including color variations, headgear options, helmet options, secondary element options, along with backpack choice, backpack attachments, and backpack charms. Your emotes, well, that's your emotes for your emote wheel, whether it be little voice quips that you can talk to raiders if you don't have an actual in-game mic, or it's just something you want to dance around a little bit, you can equip those there. And then Scrappy, you can customize your favorite rooster just for the whimsy of it. It's not anything that's really too serious with that one, but you can customize Scrappy a little bit. Trials are going to be challenge sets that will be available to players to climb leaderboards with, so that's something you may want to take into consideration, get some extra bonus reward yields out of that. Projects are probably the biggest thing here in regards to what we haven't seen just yet. This is where you can contribute to your overall optional wipes. The Expedition Project is the first one. This being the first of many seasonal expeditions that task you, in the case of the first, to commit parts and items to tier increasingly difficult or rare tiers of progression, setting your way out seemingly and attempting to build a one-way ticket to venture further through the tubes, out into the unknown, beyond Speranza. Now, if you choose to take part in this, you'll have about 60 days to complete these items that you need to craft your caravan out into the unknown, and then a window in which you can accept to go off on that expedition, thus essentially sunsetting your character that you've been working on, and then you'll have a new one here after that window closes that you can start all over again. So with that in lore, your character's kind of just going off into the unknown, you essentially then start from square one, or kind of square one again. This being a way to offer benefit in terms of rewards for your time and taking that step, an optional sort of prestige, if you'd like to call it that, but also in a way that isn't necessarily detrimental to the comparative gameplay experience if somebody else doesn't want to end up sunsetting their character. So what you lose and what will reset if you decide to take part in the project at the end of this window is any sort of upgrade to your stash that will default back to the default. All inventory items will be gone, blueprints gone, coins gone, player level gone, skill skill points accrued, gone. Raider Den progress, the workshop installations, and any active quest lines, those will all be reset down to your base level. You're starting from scratch at that point. But what will be kept are all unlocked maps, so you don't have to go through any onboarding process again. All unlocked workshop stations, Codex entries, Raider tokens, Cred, Raider deck or battle pass progression, active leaderboards, trials, cosmetics, personal event progress, bonus skill points earned from expedition, and bonus stash slots earned from expeditions. The final two of those being something that carries over from completed ones. So if this first one we're talking about is something, you won't have those included because you just don't have those bonuses just yet. But taking part in and voluntarily wiping your slate clean will reward players with new items and buffs, including increased XP gains, extra scrappy materials, increased weapon repair values, and more stash space. You can also earn bonus skill points based on the value of the items in your stash upon departure. So like if you had a really good inventory that you're resetting, you'll end up getting more bonus skill points because of that, as like compensation for being like, okay, you traded in some really good stuff, we'll toss you a bone here. Next and finally in your Raider category, the Codex. This is your world book and quests on your two main tabs. So basically just like your lore and identifiers for your archetypes and other traders, this is pretty much purely informational and is something that you can choose to take it all in, or if you don't really interact with it all that much, I don't think you'll really be missing out on too much on it. But player stats can also be found here too if you're curious how you've stacked up for your entire lifetime or anything like that. Basically a combat record of sorts. But that said, let's talk about a little bit of the raids. We're 20 minutes into the video already. Let's talk about the game and how you actually get into it, what you'll experience, the maps and the worlds. All maps available at launch are Dam Battlegrounds, Spaceport, Buried City, and Blue Gate. Also seen previously in the Server Slam on the selection menu, but not playable in what we end up having initially, nor what we had in the Server Slam, is Stella Montis. Still a rather cryptic and mysterious map that we haven't seen anything beyond just it exists kind of in a teaser here and there. But those are your maps in the worlds. Some of these will end up having occasionally special conditions on them. Things like the Harvester, which is a harvester machine surrounded by the Queen. Once you end up getting inside this, you basically have to deactivate it, and then you get a bunch of great high-level loot out of it. There's the Husk Graveyard, which is decaying Ark with some additional loot. There's the Probe Heist, which is additional probe drops for higher loot yields. You have hidden caches, which are just hidden caches around the map. Lush Blooms. The Night Raid is nighttime on maps, which changes the dynamic of combat. And finally, Electromagnetic Storm, which changes again the dynamic of combat. People have actually died from the electromagnetic storm, getting struck by lightning. That was something that I thought was pretty cool to see that sort of stat conveyed by Embark after the Server Slam. But those are usually on rotations, and they could just be something that offers an extra added threat or maybe benefited yield. When in world though, you have to keep in mind your Ark enemies. Wild players are always a possible threat. I mean, it is PvE, though it creates some great moments when they're not enemies. The predominant threat to you topside are still going to be Ark. Here you end up having your ticks, which are like your spider-like arc drones, the pop, which is a roller arc drone that will explode in close proximity, the fireball, which is another roller arc that will burn you if in close enough proximity, the snitch, which is an aerial recon arc drone that will spot you and call in reinforcements that can be lethal, those reinforcements being the Hornet and the Wasp, both of which are flying arc drones. The Hornet ends up having a stun gun while the Wasp ends up having a machine gun. The Bombardier and Bastion are sort of like tank ones, but the Bombardier is a weaker sibling of the Bastion, where it's slow but will fire rockets at you from afar. The Bastion is a heavily fortified machine gunner arc, deadly but slow. Then you end up having the Rocketeer, which is highly aggressive and has deadly rocket firepower. The Leaper is insanely dangerous. Like, I'm not kidding, it will leap at you from across the map, so I wouldn't shoot at it and aggro it if I were you. Then the Queen is the most deadly, heavily fortified, has insane firepower, often guarding the Harvester with high tier loot, so there's a lot to keep an eye open for. Additionally, there are turret and sentinel arc machines, but those are stationary and won't really chase you down, so while a threat, you can also still manage to avoid them in close proximity. Danger modes for your arc, for these ones that are like flying around, you'll end up seeing that if they're blue or like have a blue eye or ring around them, they're no threat to you at all. They're just kind of scanning the area, but you're undetected. You don't have to worry too much. Yellow means they're searching actively. They don't quite have a lock on you, but they're suspicious. Take some cover or get far enough away that you can get rid of their aggro and you should be fine. And then red, well, that means they see you, they're actively hunting you, so just be careful. Ammo types are really important when taking these down, as is finding the weak points for each of these. But if you end up having ammo types, I'd recommend medium or heavy for this. You can end up killing arcs with light ammo. It just takes a lot more ammunition, and makes a lot more noise. So if you end up having the ability to draw more arc in because they hear you, or even players worse off, that's something you just got to be conscious of. So taking medium or heavy ammo to this will definitely be something that's a bit more beneficial. But as for combat here within Arc Raiders, there is a very big importance on shields. One of the big discrepancies you'll see with a player that is kitted versus not is their light shield versus heavy shield is such a major difference in terms of damage mitigation. That's one of those things that 0 to hero runs are definitely nice, but man, can they be tough if that's the case. Just know that sometimes they will be lopsided in those gunfights, but shields are absolutely important to end up crafting and trying to upgrade when possible. In game, whenever you get some of your shields ripped, you can either regen these with actual shield charges, or arc power cells can also be used as well, those being really common when you destroy other arc machines. Quick selecting heals also is very important, where again, holding Q or whatever you have it bound to, I believe it's left trigger by default on controller, will bring up that wheel of selections. Otherwise, you're just going to end up having the quick swap, where if you tap that, it will just bring you to the next item in that list. Now, one big question with Arc Raiders and in combat is, if you're knocked, can you get back up? Well, if you're knocked down, any teammate can get you back up if you are still in that knocked down position. If you have bled out, you're done, unfortunately. But if you are still able to crawl around, you're able to still be bleeding out, you can still be picked up by any teammate here at this, whether by standard healing and that revive that takes a little bit of time, or defibrillators are also super important because they're a much quicker way to get players up. Now, if you're knocked while solo, unless you get picked up by an enemy with a defibrillator, no, you're unfortunately out of luck. There's no self-revive mechanic or anything at the moment, and I don't think that's going to be in the plans for the future. Which, by the way, yes, you can actually revive an enemy. Defibrillators both work on your own teammates and enemies. So whether you want to choose to trust someone and bring them back up, like me and my squad did here recently, or you want to knock them down again and troll them a bit, that's entirely up to you, but it is possible to get an enemy squad up if you have that certain item. One thing to be conscious of also when it comes to Arc Raiders is your stamina. As we mentioned, that's one of my first things that I like to max out where possible with my skill tree is my stamina. I don't like running out of energy, having to slow down my pace and walk, because half the time whenever I'm moving that it's not inside a building and I'm outside, I'm trying to get from cover to cover. Anytime that I'm caught out in the open is a time that either arc machines or maybe another player could spot me, and that could be the end. So watching your stamina, if you run empty-handed, you'll use less of this, and weight ends up taking away more as well. So the heavier you have, if you're over encumbered, you're going to notice that your stamina, not only are you moving slower, but you're also burning more stamina in the process. So stamina is one of those things that you have to basically always be conscious of when in game and when moving. Combat rolling is also something that's definitely very nice. I'd check your binds here on controller. I think it's defaulted on Alt on mouse and keys, which is what I play on. But this is something that while it uses more stamina, yes, it can be really advantageous in either dodging incoming fire from arc machines or throwing off the aim of an enemy that may be shooting at you. That's one of those things that I ended up, especially in the tech test, I really found a groove for it. That was something that I just started kind of combat rolling anytime a player would end up shooting at me, because it would throw off their aim that much. I'd still be able to track them, but they would not really be able to because of that quick dart left, right, back, or forward. That was something very beneficial. Ping items is just something that's really helpful as well for your team, whether it be an enemy raider, a specific item they may need for their quests, or just an arc machine in general. Ping where you can, because if you don't have a microphone, it's of course very easy to convey that information you're trying to get across just with that system. One thing that's pretty cool you can also do is craft items in game. This, unfortunately, with the full launch of the game and the server slam most recently, is tethered to a skill tree unlock. I don't know if that was the case in the tech test. I know that I ended up having the ability to. I don't know how far I got progressing that skill tree during that tech test, just thinking back on it. I mean, it was 6 months ago. But crafting items in-game is something that can be very beneficial, but again, you'll have to pay attention to your skill tree and unlock that here at first. Elevator timers are also something you have to be conscious of. To get out of the match is, of course, obviously a big risk in and of itself. Unless you have a hatch key for a raider hatch, which we'll touch on in a second, elevators are the main way that you'll end up getting out of the match. And because of the way the progression works, some elevators disappear. Like, some disappear after 5-10 minutes, and then eventually it whittles down to one final elevator that you have to go to. Otherwise, you're just trapped. Elevators disappearing, though, be conscious of which ones are closest to you, what their time is before they disappear, so that you can either get out or make sure you have to rotate to a different elevator so that you can get out safely. But again, oppositely, hatch keys are something that give you access to a personal exfil location, essentially. A raider hatch is something that is much safer. It's only a use-by-use case, so you end up inserting that key, and it gives you, I want to say, like 15 to 30 seconds that the hatch is open, and your entire squad can get out for free at that point, which is definitely nice. You don't have to go to any contested point anywhere that may be funneling arc machines and players to one singular location. You can instead just go off in the distance, this little hidden hatch, and then exfil safely. One thing to be conscious of, though, of course, is that timer. I have had it happen where my squad wasn't quite there in time. Somebody popped it, maybe me, not going to say it was me or anything, that they popped that hatch a little too quick. We got out, and then the last person in the squad that was straggling a little behind ended up not making it. So that's something you have to be conscious of as well, but a definite very good way to end up getting out safely. Just right now, with the way the game has been adjusted, those hatch keys are a little harder to find compared to 6 months ago with the tech tests. That said, what happens if you stay in the match until the very end? Well, pending nothing changes here from the full launch and what we had access to last week with a capture session, well, nothing really all that cool, kind of. Like, you see some of the arc orbiters and the sort of nukes coming in, but unless you're in the immediate vicinity of it, it doesn't kill you, and the server just kind of kicks you out saying like, sorry, dude. So unfortunately, a little bit anticlimactic there, but you do end up dying and losing everything if you don't make it into that final sort of exfil. Now, the final thing we'll talk about here in regards to Arc Raiders is the core concept of the game. Of course, it is a PvPvE shooter extraction game, but it's not necessarily something that you have to take part in PvP. I know a lot of comments I've seen pertain to, well, I'd love this if this was PvE. And yes, it is something that PvP will always be in the area and an ever-present threat, but you personally, what you have control over, you don't necessarily have to take part in PvP if you don't want to. Now, yes, you are still gonna have to watch your back because you can't trust other players in a PvPvE game mode sometimes. Like, there's always gonna be a bad apple that's gonna string you along or betray you or something like that, or shoot on sight even. But for this game in particular, there is not a single quest, progression, unlock, or item that is tethered to PvP that will force you to do that. Again, the threat will always be there, but if you want to go stealth, just shoot at arcs and progress your inventory, your quest lines, the story narrative, you can. And honestly, frankly, if you're a PvE style player, pending the other player's choice, again, you're actually still in a prime position with PvE. We'll have an XP breakdown here soon on the channel, but honestly, two of the biggest categories that you can gain XP from, just as of a little preview, is looting and spending time on the surface. So if you're legitimately just like looting everything, doing tasks as well, and staying late into the game, you're gonna get a ton of XP just from that. You don't have to PvP in that sense. But that said, I would recommend having a microphone and having it enabled to push to talk or some way to easily communicate. Not all encounters need to result in gunfights. In fact, there's some incredible engagements that can be had of players working together or just simply having fun together. Like, I think the capture session we had here with this, obviously it's a little different because it's creators and we all want to make content and have some fun with stuff. I think we ended up having a group of like 16 people or something like that at one point before ultimately being betrayed. But you know, there's going to be a bad apple for sure at some point, but you always have that chance to make a friend, to have a funny storyline to go along with that. And oftentimes you'll come across people, especially solo, just other players trying to do their thing, scavenging, working on contracts. Make it known that you're just trying to be there. You're not a threat. You're just trying to do some stuff, and maybe it's mutually beneficial for both of you to just say hi and move on. End of the day, I'm sure that most people in that situation don't want to risk having all of their loot lost when they're just trying to do contracts. So what's the worst in communicating? What could happen? Obviously, yeah, you could lose your stuff, but by communicating that you're friendly, you might also just get yourself a free pass. So that is Arc Raiders in a nutshell. If you made it this far, truly, thank you guys so much. Also, comment Scrappy. Let's see how many of you guys make it this far into it. But let me know your thoughts down below. What are you guys thinking of Arc Raiders? Did this help you out in any capacity? Was it insightful? Did it give you any information here that can be beneficial? Let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. This video took an enormous amount of time to compile and put together, so any and all support does help greatly. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. We have so much stuff for Arc Raiders coming up here in the near future. I can't wait to share with you guys, to continue making content on it, to stream this all the time. Very excited to share this with you, but I'd love to have in the community as we push towards 700,000 subscribers. For now, though, thank you so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you topside, Raiders. Take care, and peace.